It is midnight in Washington, 6 in London, and 2 on the very last day of the year here in Seoul. I'm Moon Conn-young. Let's get a check of the main stories we're following at this hour. There is still hope that the nation's 2014 budget bill will be approved before the midnight deadline. Lawmakers have made some progress and cleared one hurdle toward the budget's passage. President Park Geun-hye addressed the nation on this New Year's Eve, vowing to make the country a safer and a more prosperous one for the Korean people in the new year. And Koreans will see their utility bills go up starting tomorrow. The government announces a plan to raise natural gas prices by an average of 5.8% to make up for a recent hike in import prices. We'll have those stories and more, but let's begin with the parliamentary news. So here we are on the final day of 2013, and Korea's parliament has still yet to pass a number of key bills, including the 2014 budget bill. The bill needs to be approved by midnight, or lawmakers will have to draw up an unprecedented provisional budget. ARIRANG News Kim Hyung-gil starts us off.
Parliament restarted talks Tuesday to pass not only the national budget for next year, but a series of other key bills. The national budget will be put to a vote at Tuesday's Parliamentary Budget Committee meeting before it goes to the National Assembly's plenary session. Earlier Tuesday, the ruling Saenuri Party and main opposition Democratic Party agreed to add a clause in the bill on reforming the nation's spy agency, which has been a hurdle in passing the budget. The bill bans National Intelligence Service agents from having full access to government offices, including media outlets, and it also stipulates penalties for any illegal activities performed by agents who are part of the psychological warfare unit. President Park Geun-hye has urged Parliament to pass the $340 billion national budget by year's end, because if it fails to do so, the government will have to put together a provisional budget which would severely curtail spending intended to boost Korea's economy. If this were to happen, the government could only execute mandatory expenditure, spend money on maintaining some public organizations, and continue previously approved business projects. Such spending accounts for around 40% of the proposed budget. Kim Hyung-gil, ARIRANG News.
Now on to the nationwide rail strike that gripped Korea for over 3 weeks. Well, that is now officially over, with thousands of striking workers returning to their posts within the last hour or so. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Watchers are hailing President Park Geun-hye and her administration's adherence to the law for resolving the rail strike in the manner in which they did. After 22 long days for the nation's commuters and companies alike, striking core rail union workers returned to work at 11 a.m. Korea time. Union leaders promised to call off the strike Monday after the country's two main political parties agreed to form a parliamentary subcommittee under the Transport Ministry. The first subcommittee meeting Tuesday will focus mainly on ways to enhance the management of Korail without privatizing part of its KTX bullet train service. Union leaders have pledged to be actively involved every step of the way.
We will be actively involved in the new subcommittee to guide it in the right direction, and we will share the process with the public to enhance our public railway system.
The formation of the new subcommittee was one of 5 changes the union asked for during talks with management last week. The union said the government's plan to form a subsidiary to run a new KTX line was actually the first step toward privatizing rail services in the future, something the government still denies. The parliamentary committee will be made up of an equal number of members from the two main rival parties, but it will be headed by a ruling Saenuri Party lawmaker. The rail strike is now over, but officials say it will take about 1 week before rail services return to normal. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
President Park Geun-hye says she'll continue her push to normalize the abnormal practices in society in 2014. Now, during her New Year's address to the nation on this Tuesday, President Park called on the public to join in the government's efforts to open a new future for the country that's aimed at making each and every person's life happier and more abundant. Now, she pledged to focus on revitalizing the economy and stabilizing people's livelihoods. Now, on North Korea, President Park reiterated that her administration will maintain a firm security posture and crisis management system in preparation for any possible provocation by the North and lay the foundation for a peaceful reunification of the two Koreas. Meanwhile, there are signs North Korea could once again threaten South Korea just after an annual military training exercise between South Korea and the U.S. that's set to begin next March. The Seoul-based Institute for National Security Strategy says there is a high possibility Pyongyang could attempt a fourth nuclear test or launch another ballistic missile following the annual Key Resolve and Full Eagle drills. The institute adds the North could set off provocations in order to strengthen its internal unity, which could have been affected by the execution of Chang Song-taek, the once powerful uncle of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. In response, the South Korean military said it was ready to retaliate if provoked. Pyongyang recently dispatched 60 attack helicopters and 200 pieces of heavy artillery to islands near the western maritime border to strengthen its defense capabilities there. Well, no matter which way you slice it, 2013 was not a year in which much got done in Korea's parliament. The ruling and main opposition parties were at each other's throats over allegations of election meddling, a missing summit transcript, and much, much more. Kim Min-ji has this wrap-up.
The Park Geun-hye administration got off to a rocky start as the Government Organization Act had not yet passed the National Assembly. With the ruling and opposition parties failing to reach an agreement over the government reorganization plan, Park became the first president in Korea's history to take office before receiving approval from Parliament. President Park was sworn in office without finishing the appointments for her prime minister and cabinet members.
The National Assembly has become a sticking point for the new administration.
I think the lack of progress on negotiations on the reorganization plan is due to the top-down decision-making style of the ruling party and the president.
New allegations about state agencies meddling in the presidential election also took a toll on the relationship between the two sides. With investigations failing to provide clear-cut answers, the rival parties stepped up their attacks on each other. The confrontation escalated after the transcript from the 2007 Inter-Korean Summit was reported missing. The transcript held the key to determining whether former South Korean President Roh Moo-hyun made remarks to nullify the West Sea border with North Korea. The Saenuri Party held opposition lawmaker Moon Jae-in, chief of staff at the time, responsible, while opposition parties said the Saenuri Party illegally got hold of the transcript to influence the presidential election.
Lawmaker Moon Jae-in himself will know very well, so I cannot say to him to hold whatever responsibility. He should decide for himself.
The prosecutors should conduct a fair and detailed investigation into how the transcript was leaked.
Despite the wrangling, lawmakers from both sides were able to successfully mediate the prolonged nationwide railway strike that came to an end on Monday. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
All of the day's important events. Events close to home, around the world.
The second half, let's figure out what winners.
The arts and culture scene and the heart of global business.
Experts added that
ARIRANG News has your whole day covered.
the legislature will convene a plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government.
Well, the price of natural gas is set to go up by roughly 5.8% starting January 1st, which is tomorrow, reflecting a recent hike in import prices. The Korea Gas Corporation made the announcement this Tuesday, saying that the decision was made because of a rise in the average purchase price of gas, followed by growing demands for gas after 3 of the country's nuclear reactors were shut down earlier this year. Well, the price of gas for households will go up by 5.7%, translating into an additional $4 per household per month. The industrial sector will see a 6.1% increase and the service sector a 5.5% hike. Now, this is the third time this year gas prices have gone up after the surges in February and August. Meanwhile, Korea's consumer price index has logged its lowest growth in 14 years. Statistics Korea says prices grew by an average of 1.3% this year, making it the lowest growth in 14 years, when it was at 0.8% right after the Asian financial crisis in the late 1990s. Consumer prices in December rose 1.1% from the same month a year ago, dropping by 0.1 percentage point from the previous month. Now, it's a second straight month the index has been in the 1% range. Prices rose by nearly 2% from the previous year, excluding agriculture and petroleum products. Prices of fresh produce dropped by just over 11%. Statistics Korea says prices will continue to be stable and there is currently no risk of deflation. Let's now take a closer look at how the global economic conditions affected Korea in 2013. Now, when we look back over the past 12 months, we can see the strong reemergence of two consumption behaviors. Our Connie Kim explains.
Korean society has entered a slow growth stage, and in 2013, that was accentuated in two already existing consumption patterns that came to the fore.
As a response to the slow economic growth, consumers are purchasing low-cost everyday products, while at the same time spending more on goods that reflect their tastes and interests.
The Korea Trend Research Institute included budget phones and less expensive convenience store brand products on its list of 2013 hit items. Budget phones targeted the niche market of customers who only wanted the basic functions of a cell phone, while the convenience store brands targeted consumers looking for bargains.
I usually purchase convenience store brand snacks and coffee. I buy these products because they offer a wide variety, lower prices, and are high quality.
However, on the other hand, individuals showed a different purchasing trend when it came to small luxuries, including desserts, liquor, and premium perfumes.
The luxury trend has become widespread, and consumer purchases of small luxuries have become even more popular because of the relatively low cost.
When it comes to home appliances, consumers prefer to buy multifunction electronic products such as refrigerators that preserve kimchi, make carbonated water and purify water, and air washers that also function as humidifiers and air purifiers. These new categories of appliances were popular as they reduce energy consumption and free up extra space. Analysts say the consumption trend for 2014 will resemble a barbell where consumers select products that offer traditional conveniences and at the same time, new experiences. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
As the year comes to an end, more people decide to share what they have with those in need. The donating trend in Korea, however, is steadily changing, with individuals choosing to be more charitable with their extra pennies. Our Shin Se-min has more.
An anonymous individual dropped a check worth nearly $95,000 into one of the Salvation Army's red kettles in Seoul this December. The organization says it's the third straight year that the generous benefactor has made the donation, although he or she remains unknown. Although most of those donating money in Korea are giving far less than thousands of dollars at a time, the total amount being donated in the country has been on a steady rise in recent years. In 2011, a combined $10.5 billion was donated by businesses and individuals, with over 63% of that coming from the public, double the amount seen 4 years earlier.
This thermometer in Gwanghwamun Plaza is part of the Community Chest of Korea's year-end fundraising drive that runs through Lunar New Year. And as you can see, citizens have contributed around $200 million so far, roughly $90 million short of the target amount.
As for why Koreans are giving in record amounts, analysts say economic growth isn't the primary reason.
When you give individually rather than in a group or corporate setting, it becomes a personal matter because the giver has the power and choice over the donation, and the receiver knows exactly where the donation comes from. And there is increased happiness because of the more personal for the both parties.
A sentiment echoed by the warm-hearted individuals who are giving this holiday season.
Although it's a small amount, the fact that I contributed in helping those less fortunate gives me satisfaction.
And it doesn't only have to be cash or coins dropped in a bucket. Individual donors in Korea are also encouraged to donate via the phone, credit card, and by wire transfer. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
The Korean film industry reached some milestones this year with record ticket sales and Korean directors entering the global market. Our Son Jung-in gives us a roundup of the year in movies.
2013 has been a bountiful year for the Korean movie industry, with a record 200 million tickets sold. And behind this success were local thrillers such as Cold Eyes, Hide and Seek, and The Terror Life, which dominated the box office.
Many moviegoers like to watch thrillers, but this year in particular, the movies that attracted them more had unique details and diverse actors.
Movies about North Korean defectors such as The Berlin File, Secretly Greatly, Commitment, and The Suspect were also popular, with the defector storyline adding an extra element of suspense.
I like the fact that the actors are all so handsome, and unlike some of the dark and depressing storylines I've seen in the past, these movies have some fun factors that made them more interesting.
This was also the year of the re-release at the Korean box office, with local theaters offering screenings of classics Cinema Paradiso and Love Letter, which drew more than 20,000 moviegoers each, and Leon, which attracted 40,000.
We couldn't really watch these classic movies on the big screen before, so it is nice to see them again in the theater.
2013 was also the year that major Korean directors made their Hollywood debuts, with Park Chan-wook's Stoker and Kim Ji-woon's The Last Stand hitting it big overseas. Rookie directors also made a splash at the cinema this year, with The Attorney, Hide and Seek, The Terror Life, and Cold Eyes, each surpassing 5 million viewers.
Heo-jung's Hide and Seek, Kim Byung-woo's The Terror Life, and Yang Woo-seok's The Attorney were all made by new directors working in different genres. And they are the sole evidence that Korean movies are becoming more diverse.
According to local cinema chain CGV, the average Korean has watched 4 movies at theaters this year, making them some of the most avid moviegoers in the world, with experts crediting the growing diversity of the films on offer. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Well, 2013 has been a banner year for the Korean film industry, with total theater admissions exceeding 200 million for the first time in history. As this historic year in the realm of cinema at least draws to an end, we wanted to take a look back at some of the greatest things that happened in Korean cinema and others that we all probably could have done without. For our end of the year arts and culture segment, we're joined in the studio by film critic Piers Conran. Piers, thanks for coming in. It's good to have you with us today.
It's great to be back. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's begin with an overall assessment of the Korean movie industry in 2013. I mean, which factors make 2013 stand out compared to previous years?
Well, I mean, there's been a great diversity of commercial films, certainly, and the industry has kind of grown on its success in the last 2 years. It would have experienced kind of a lull maybe 6 years ago, and it's kind of steadily gone up since then, and now it's reached a peak. 212 million tickets sold this year, 126 million of those to Korean films. Both of those are a record, and we're looking at about 60% of the market being just Korean films. So it's been just a very big year for the Korean film industry. The studios are they're starting to understand what the audiences want, and they're doing a pretty good job of kind of giving that to them again and again.
All right, let's take a look at what kind of movies were particularly favored by Korean viewers, and which didn't fare quite well.
Well, looking at the top 10, we have currently 8 of the top 10 films are Korean. However, a current release, The Attorney, is doing very well, and before the end of the year, I think it's going to overtake World War Z, which is at number 10, which would then bring it to 9 out of 10 for Korean films, which is pretty remarkable. Out of those, you can see a lot of those films are thrillers, actually. So thrillers have been very popular this year. Within the thrillers, there's been a lot of North Korean spy thrillers. The year kind of started off with The Berlin File, Later in the year we had Secretly Greatly. Commitment came a bit later, didn't do so well, but currently we have The Suspect, which is also doing very well. So that's films that are quite similar. North Korean spies kind of undercover in Korea, going on the run and going against their government. So there are sympathetic characters, and that's been quite an interesting trend that Korean viewers have taken to. But thrillers in general. In summer particularly, we had The Terror Live, we had Hide and Seek, we had Cold Eyes, even Snowpiercer. So it's just been a big year for thrillers in general, I think.
All right, but let's talk about the rather dark side of Korean cinema right now. The latest row over the Hobbit sequel not being able to debut in major Seoul theaters over profit share disputes.
It's been a difficult issue. It's been publicized widely. It was frustrating for a lot of viewers who couldn't see these certain big blockbusters over the last few months. We had Disney films earlier this year, Monsters University, the Pixar animation, and the Marvel comic book film Thor: Dark World, the sequel. Both of those had some distribution woes as they were not screened initially in Seoul theaters. What happened is that traditionally the profit share was split 60-40, 60 for the distributor of the film and 40 for the exhibitor. And while in the rest of the country it's 50-50. And so CGV changed their profit share scheme to 50-50, and so Disney were not happy with that. And then later this month, Warner Brothers had similar reservations as they barred the film from being, The Hobbit, from being screened in Seoul, and that's hurt the films significantly, as Seoul is about a third of the market.
Now, what other issues, in your view, appears remain as obstacles in the development of Korea's movie industry?
Well, in terms of the whole market, there's a certain problem of accessibility for some films. Of chief concern to me would be the fact that many of the great Korean films are lower budget and not necessarily made and distributed by the major companies such as CJ and Lotte and Showbox. And these films, while very good and well received by critics and at festivals and so on, they don't get the same kind of pride of place in theaters, and they don't get seen by as many people. The same could be said of a lot of films from smaller markets, so outside of the US and Korea. Even films from Japan don't fare that well these days, or China or Europe. So there's definitely, you would imagine that there could be a greater proliferation of a greater variety of films.
All right, for a brighter side of things, what are some Korean films and/or Korean filmmakers that we should keep our eyes on for the new coming year?
Well, some of the big ones, I mentioned my reservation about some of these big budget movies, but yet some of these are very exciting projects. Personally, I'm most excited about a film called Sea Fog, which is by a debut director called Shin Sung-bo, who has worked with Bong Joon-ho. He co-wrote Memories of Murder, and he was his assistant director. This film is produced by Bong Joon-ho, stars Kim Yoon-suk. Otherwise, there are an enormous amount of period films this year, two of those particularly interesting. The Battle of Myeongnam, which is a period naval warfare film with Choi Min-sik and Roo Sung-ryong, and that is the new film by War of Ours director Kim Han-min. So a lot of big budget, interesting films. But there's also lots of very, very small films that we don't know about yet that'll be really, really great. And so I always encourage people to try and experience Korean independent films.
Right, and that could actually do very well and surprise those big budget movies, right? So, Pierce, your overall forecast for the Korean cinema industry in 2014?
Well, I think there's a good chance that the industry will grow again, perhaps not as steeply as it did this year. There just seems to be a general expansion in this area of the world as the tides of cinema are slowly kind of going this way. There's a lot of films, not quite a lot of big movies, big budget films, but not necessarily films from some of the big directors that have kind of really made the industry in the past. This year we had Bong Joon-ho's Snowpiercer. Even Park Chan-wook and Kim Ji-woon had new films, though they were American films. None of them have a new film this year. It takes them a while to get a new project going. So, but I think there's a quite wide variety of films, perhaps a few too many period films in my opinion. But I think we'll see the industry go up. But I hope that studios can try and open the door a little more for other films as well to perform well.
And perhaps we could see an emerging star, a new star rise in the realm of a director. May that be a director, producer, or a film star in 2014.
Every year there's always a few new big people that make a big splash in the scene.
All right, Piers Conran, one of ARIRANG's favorite film critics. Thank you so much for a really good wrap-up of 2013 and forecast of 2014.
Thanks very much for having me.
Well, that's all from me at this hour. Thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you back here at 4 p.m. Korea time.